We're gonna, you, me, Moat Shoot Dad, and
Hi, Brian. Thank you for joining us tonight. I think Liz Vesey was going to be leading this meeting, but she is running a little late. So I, at the very least, will be introducing you as we kick off.
That sounds
It
good.
just struck 7, which is the official start time. But I think we're probably going to want to give it a few more minutes to let more people trickle in.
That's just fine with me.
I'm gonna say, I just went through that area today that's under construction, and wow, they're really going to town. Woohoo!
It's a busy summer for us.
Yep.
A busy summer. It's exciting stuff too. We're pretty excited about what it'll be like this fall and then next fall. Vince, you stole my dad's hat from when I was a kid. That's it looks exactly like the hat he wore when I was a kid. That's something else.
I think by design, the folks who do our shirts, he does basically like replicating the thrift store find of a sweatshirt or a shirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was new a few months ago, doesn't look new anymore. But yeah, the folks up the street that print our shirts also do these hats.
Very cool.
I think we've reached a critical mass for getting the meeting started. So, hi, everybody. Happy to see all of you here tonight. Brian Spencer is our guest speaker. So I'm just going to give you his bio. Brian leads a team responsible for system-wide campus development, real estate, and maintenance of the system-wide facilities master plan for the combined Nebraska Medicine and University of Nebraska Medical Center. The team is charged with ensuring the campus footprint and community sites are developed responsibly, with a vision over 50 years into the future, and prepared to meet changing demands in healthcare research and health sciences education. So, Brian, I'm thinking you probably have, a talk prepared. Am I right?
Yeah, I might have, I think in slides a little bit. I'll try not to be too dorky, but I did bring a few slides.
Great. In that case, I'll just let you launch into it.
Yeah, perfect. Well, as she mentioned, I'm Brian Spencer. I lead a team of a couple hundred people in our facilities department and architect by background, and exceedingly blessed to get to work in Omaha and across the state for the University of Nebraska Medical Center and Nebraska Medicine. I've been in my role for about 8 years. And I've been in Omaha for a little over 20, practicing as an architect before and involved with campus master planning, both as a private consultant and these last 8 years as a leader of that effort for almost all of my time in Omaha. So I've become really intimately familiar with our Midtown Omaha campus and our dozens and dozens of other sites across the city and around the state. And think of them like I do my own home a little bit. So if I switch to adjectives and things that make it sound like I'm talking about my basement, please forgive me. It's 10 million square feet, but every inch of it is like one of these little lanes on my hand, and you get really used to it. Our campus in Midtown Omaha has been here since just after the turn of the 20th century, when the folks in Lincoln asked the medical school and all of the odd things it was doing to move the science forward to get the heck out of Lincoln, and they procured site in the farmsteads on the west side of Omaha, and here we are today. There have been a number of folks that have had roles like mine through the years, and many of you might have met them in the past, gentlemen like Ken Hansen, Ron Schaefer, my partner in crime and leader, Jenny Bartholomew. We serve in a dual role for the university and the health system, which are two institutions. The university, all of us as Nebraskans own outright. And we're represented as citizens by regents that we elect. Those regents effectively serve as our boss on the university campuses. And then the health system is owned partially by the citizens of Nebraska through the university system. So we see ourselves as servants of our tripartite mission, as she mentioned in the introduction, around generating great places to learn, great places to do really life-changing research and innovative research, and then great places to do clinical care. The interesting part about a medical center campus is that great place to learn is also the same place that clinical care happens and the research happens. And really thoughtful and integrated planning around the campus is aimed at trying to integrate those three missions so that learners and patients have opportunities to overlap, and we generate new health science providers, doctors, physical therapists, all the way through the whole gamut of the health science professions. It is one of our state's biggest potential risks as we look forward in the future, as all of us age, and having enough healthcare providers and continuing to move the science forward. One of the ways that we think about all of that kind of stuff is by generating just a great place to be. Part of being a great place to be is having a campus and series of sites. Cindy, I hope all is well. Having a campus and a great series of sites that are responsible to move around in, get to interact with, and are places where you want to be, because it is really hard to keep kids in Nebraska. And one of our jobs is to keep those kids in Nebraska. I'll start sharing slides in just a minute. I was prefacing a little bit. One of the things about the broader university system that we've discovered over these many years is when research, clinical care, and education are happening, occasionally ideas come out of those things, really good ideas. And those ideas can become businesses that we would love to have businesses started in Nebraska and kept in Nebraska. Also, some of the people that we would love to have live here to do that research and clinical care and education already have ideas in companies, and part of generating a great overall medical center experience is having places for those businesses to start, develop, grow, flourish, as well as places for people to live, work, and play. So I've got a series of slides set here. Let me just rearrange my screen a little bit. A series of slides just to give a little bit of historic context, talk about our work in the Saddle Creek District in concert with some of the other stuff. Now, myself and my colleague Chad Cruz have been out talking about quite a bit of this stuff these last few years as the master plan has developed and evolved for the district. So forgive me if you've seen some of this before. We like to say what you want to say, or tell them what you're going to say what you're going to say, and then remind them what you said, right? So we're out numerous times talking about this stuff. We're trying to add to the dialogue as we go through it a little bit. So I'll give you a little bit about why the Saddle Creek District, some of the master planning background on it. Talk a little bit about, well, I think a topic that will be pertinent to mode shift folks, bike ped planning. Talk a little bit about our first couple of buildings there, and then talk about some of our public space work in the district as well. So from a historic context, the Saddle Creek District, I almost called it the name that we'll be announcing sometime later this year for the district. It's an ode to its history, but is not yet out in the public realm. We have this steelworks district, Saddle Creek District, you'll hear me call it through the presentation, that was so important in the development of our communities, had one of the first spur railroads off of that great UP line that connected our country, and served such an important part of the war effort. As time has moved on and industrial activity has cleaned and changed the way things are moving, eventually even the last of the occupancy Omaha Steelworks and the Voigtman woodworking companies were looking to move on, and they found in us a willing caretaker of the land and folks that are interested. But there's this great historic context. The challenge with some of that historic context, of course, is there were steels melted and lead melted and all kinds of tough and nasty stuff done on those sites over the years that we've had to clean up. We've worked to preserve as much of it as we can. You can see if you drive around the district now, the building that will be the home for Catalyst and our innovation hub was the last of those steelworks two buildings that we're doing a historic rehab on. We have a wonderful tenant in the Rathskeller in one of the historic buildings in the district, and we're working to bring a modern flavor and flair to that historic context. Of course, we're adjacent to the wonderful neighborhoods that surround us, Morton Meadows, Blackstone, Gold Coast, Dundee, and others around us that have this great historical context and linkage to community, and one of the great opportunities in our city to generate a really humane condition for good movement, and that promotes allowing people to arrive and move in all kinds of different modes. So why have we spent the better part of 2 decades kind of collecting land as generational change happened and businesses moved? It's really around adding to that tripartite mission, the ability to give a fertile site for businesses to start and grow that are from the ideas that our scientists and clinicians generate, as well as with folks that want to work close to the university. So we're working to generate a district that allows us to not work just in the University of Nebraska community, but across the world, work on the big problems in health and health science and biomedical science. And our wonderful group of folks across the campus feel really compelled over time to continue to address those things and set a stage where, again, those wonderful interactions can happen. We've done a bunch of visioning work through the years around who are the stakeholders, what does this Saddle Creek district want to be besides just a place for folks to start and nurture businesses. We've got a series of obvious stakeholders like our researchers, clinicians, our patients. We've got Nebraska medicine and tech startups in the scientific community, entrepreneurs. And then we've got non-obvious stakeholders, students that are not just UNMC students, neighborhood groups in the community, people that don't know about Omaha and the wonderful things that happen in Omaha, the nonprofit community, all kinds of stuff that we see having a stake in this Saddle Creek district that we're working on. Here you can see an artist's rendering of the building that's under construction. You can see the frame, the original frame of the Omaha Steelworks building, last used by Voigtman Woodworking now, and the brick building behind it. We're doing rehabs on both of those and adding to them. Together, they'll be what we're calling Catalyst, and part of Catalyst will have an innovation hub for UNMC in it. And part of it will be startup kind of health sciences, WeWork types of spaces. So folks will be able to rent an office or use a community space, stuff like that. We're pretty excited about it. On this plan that's on the right-hand side of this slide is our artist's look at a way the district could develop. And what you see, we lovingly call it the pizza wedge or the triangle, bordered by Saddle Creek on the east, Leavenworth at the south point, 48th Street on the west, Farnham and Douglas along the north. You can see that kind of makeup of space, and you see a number of buildings. Really, we have L is in Larry, G is in gangster, and E is in Edward going at the moment. L is that building that's already under construction. G is a parking garage that we've worked with the city to build that will serve the whole district. We're going to build it in a couple phases, and also we hope eventually serve as part of the communication or transit network in our community with buses and eventually potentially streetcar and other things. And then E, Edward, is a building we're calling CORE, Campus Operations and Research Excellence. It's a replacement for our administrative building, which is derelict and end of life partially, and then a space where we'll have some of the only rentable wet lab space in our state. There's less than 10,000 square feet of rentable wet lab space, and every foot of it's used. So folks that have scientific startups that require wet lab space have to leave our market in order to develop and grow those businesses. So those three buildings are going. L is under construction. The garage and the core building are finishing design. And then, of course, if you've been near campus recently, you know we're my own worst enemy around getting to and from campus in some cases at the moment, with Farnham Street closed, parts of 46th and 48th Street closed, all aimed at doing the infrastructure and roadway work that's happening at the moment. One of the things, just to highlight the work that's kind of ongoing in construction, in design, and some exciting work that we think we'll hear really positive things from the Nebraska Department of Transportation in the coming weeks on from a grant standpoint. So completed, we spent, as I said, 15 years acquiring parcel by parcel at generational turnover, not using eminent domain, and great, they came to us stories around land acquisition to put this set of parcels together that's about 27 acres. We've spent the last several years, as many folks know, doing the kind of EPA type cleanup of the sites, and we have letters of no further action, which is the lamest way to say we have returned to healthy earth this site, and it's ready for green space, roads, buildings, all of that kind of stuff. And we have demolished several structures that were derelict on it and didn't have significant cultural value. We, as I mentioned, we had the Catalyst Innovation Hub under construction. And then we've got the intersection of 46th and Farnham, which will become a four-way signalized intersection with great pedestrian crossing, great line of sight. Under construction, 46th Street extension all the way through the district is under construction, and we're hoping to finish up the kind of hook from 48th Street, which will be disconnected from Leavenworth to take Leavenworth from a kind of five-way intersection by where that Jiffy Lube used to be to a traditional four-way intersection. And a series of other minor improvements and extension of Emily Street into the district. The bulk of that work north of Leavenworth Street will be done this build season, and we hope to have open by the holiday season. The lines you see in red on this plan are bike and pedestrian ways that are separated from the roads. No, Carmen, pardon if there was any confusion. 48th isn't going away. It won't directly connect to Leavenworth Street anymore. It's so close to the intersection of Saddle Creek, it's actually the cause of a good number of traffic incidents from a city standpoint. And the city, through the design of this stuff, has disconnected 48th Street from Leavenworth, but reconnected it to Saddle Creek as a right in, right out off of Saddle Creek at the south end. The north end will remain unchanged, and the existing infrastructure along there will remain unchanged. Another big part of this is there's a bunch of high voltage electrical stuff, and we're doing a large project to bury all of that and get all of that risk out of the way so that we don't have anyone that's ridden their bike up the sidewalk on the north side of Leavenworth Street headed west knows about the big high voltage electrical poles. Those the ones west of us will still exist, but the ones that were north and south through the district will go away. And it's three major circuits that we've relocated through this last winter. And then we're burying sewers, that infrastructure, water, all of that stuff as we speak. As I mentioned, the garage and the core administrative facility are in design. And then the exciting thing that we're starting to talk about a little more, and we're really bullish. We don't have notice of award yet from the state DOT, so no checks are signed on big picture, but we've put together a package of protected bikeway along Emily Street, and I'll show you in just a moment, a bridge over Saddle Creek, and a bridge over Leavenworth for a field club trail extension to ease bike and ped movement through our campus and to our campus, and also mitigate some of our highest risk interactions and intersections. As many of you know all too well, the Saddle Creek and Leavenworth intersection, the Saddle Creek and Farnham intersection, the Saddle Creek and Emily intersection, the 39th and 40th Street and Leavenworth intersections are all high risk intersections for our campus. The work we did on 42nd and Leavenworth has mitigated most of our major issues that we've had with pedestrian vehicle incidents or bike and vehicle incidents, thankfully. But there's still work to do in those other intersections. We're hoping through this work to improve all of those conditions. So that bike ped package is this map could be a little bit small from that standpoint, but again, an extension of the Field Club Trail right by our friends and neighbors at Ponderosa, with a bridge over Leavenworth Street. Now, the exact orientation of that bridge, this is highly conceptual work, isn't finalized. And there's a bunch of work to do. And actually, Vince and I have been talking recently about that. We have the first $1 million of planning money coming this September for the 39th-ish Street Leavenworth Field Club Extension Bridge to start planning. So we're actually starting to think about pulling the group together to talk about that in a lot more detail and doing some kickoff and an initial kind of work with the city. So that should be going pretty well. And we hope to hear again in short order on the rest of this. But that would extend Field Club north of Leavenworth all the way through to the Emily Jones corridor. A long time Omahans will remember that Emily and Jones were kind of half block apart, and the university maybe 15 years ago put that S-curve in this area to connect them, which will put us in a position for all the way along this Emily Jones corridor to have a bikeway, and for a goodly section of it to have a protected bike lane, and then jump onto a bridge kind of in this zone that will go over Saddle Creek with future extensions to several other places, and then land adjacent to all of this other development that's going on. And of course, there's long-term planning and land acquisition by other parties, of course, underway for an eventual Beltline trail that would launch almost at 48th or 46th and Dodge-ish, and then head to points north. So this really paves the way for connectivity of that and future great connections across campus. You can also see dashed here on the east end of this, and that's the roughly 39th Street corridor that we intend through some projects in the coming few years to extend that bikeway north through campus to Dewey, Harney, Farnham zone, heading north into Blackstone proper, with hope that when the eventual Harney Street or other bikeway continues west in the future in its permanent home, as the streetcar project brings that all into focus, that people will be able to jump from that to this and connect to and through campus in a really meaningful way. Turn off the annotation or flip slides. Again, here's a couple pictures of that innovation hub at Catalyst. That existing set of structures, we're preserving the frame and some of the kind of core gantry crane elements and foundry elements that were inside of it. And then we're inserting 2 new floors inside of it. So it'll be a 3-story building in that kind of open barns type frame. You see the brick building we preserved the bulk of, and it will exist as is. And the little alley that was between them, we're actually going to enclose, as you can see on this bottom picture. And that'll generate kind of the circulation and kind of key organizing space for this group. The next piece to kind of build on that story around connectivity that we're talking about, you can see some of the bike ped connectivity I've been talking about. Again, exact locations, a lot of work to do there. But the spirit of the connection is extending Field Club, connecting through to the west, to the Saddle Creek district, as well as connecting to our eventual project next on the old Monroe Meyer Institute and JP Lord building sites, and through and to campus and other places. We're thinking a lot about how we then generate great places to park and check out bike shares, B-cycles, that kind of stuff through the district, and connect into the work we'll be doing inside of the district with that stuff. You see here also the beginnings of the concept for eventual green space in the district that would be programmed as public space. with the thought that over time, it could have several kind of uses, some great open space, and potentially some great public art and public sculpture, as well as again, some of the kind of transit oriented stuff that infrastructure that we would like to have in the district to ensure people can arrive in whatever way they'd like. Just a couple images showing what that park might look like in the future. We've still got fundraising and all kinds of work to do on a lot of this, but that's an update on the Saddle Creek district and the work that's been going, the work that's underway, and certainly happy to answer any questions folks have as you think about that. Cindy, I am very optimistic that we will generate bike ped crossing over Leavenworth and over Saddle Creek in a protected bikeway connecting those two things. I can't at the moment say more, but I would ask you to just check the Nebraska Department of Transportation website over the next couple of weeks. We anticipate that we put significant work in this last winter and spring to prepare what we see as some compelling transit alternative program submissions to the last round of ARPA DOT TAP, Transportation Alternatives Programs funding grants, and we're pretty excited. We don't have official word yet, but there were not overly many submissions from Nebraska, and the city and the university put together, we think, a really good package. And thankfully, every one of the neighborhood associations that touches our district submitted a letter of support. So our friends in Blackstone and Morton Meadows in Dundee and others submitted letters of support along with the Blackstone Business Improvement District and the Blackstone Business Association. So I'm hopeful. Renata asks in the chat if the old MMI building off of Saddle Creek going to be demoed or refurbished. We found a temporary creative use for it for the next few years as the construction offices for a lot of the work that's going on there. Long term, we do see a replacement building. It's not in particularly good nick, and it has a number of accessibility and other issues. But we see ourselves using it in lieu of construction trailers for several of the big projects. When you think bridge, is it like 67th and Dodge where you have to climb, or more like peak to peak to east to west over Saddle Creek? Our hope is that we would meet all bike ped crossings, so and ADA with these, so they would be really rollable ramps for folks with low mobility, as well as folks on bikes and other stuff. Yeah, Liz, so few separated bike lanes in Omaha, and so many bike vehicle incidents. Together we'll work on that. D asks if the expectation in the future is to allow movement other than on Leavenworth or Saddle Creek, and versus having a highly functional surface intersection for all bike movements. I think the interesting, I think we'll further explore that adjacent Ponderosa together, whether an on-grade or other is best through the engineering analysis. I think it's a really fair question there, and it deserves further engineering analysis. The hill we have headed down Emily to Saddle Creek, and the way the bridge can work there can actually make mobility better by reducing the ramp for folks of going down or up Emily, because we'll be able to launch on the high side without a ramp, and the length of the bridge will allow us to taper while still getting over Saddle Creek and make for an easier pedestrian and bicycle movement. He's been up some ramps if That's I think a thoughtful question about that.
I have a question. I don't know if there's another one in the queue, but my name is Alex, and I recently walked down by the Leavenworth and Saddle Creek intersection. There's a couple slip lanes down there, and I was looking at the image, I guess one of the slides. It still shows the slip lanes. Do we know what sort of improvements are being done to make it safer?
Yeah, and I just want to make sure Alex, capture what you're asking there. Slip lanes, you mean free right-hand movements for westbound folks on Leavenworth, eastbound folks on Leavenworth, and then northbound and southbound folks on Saddle Creek. There's slip lanes in east and westbound Leavenworth anyway, for sure.
Right.
Right now, the city's engineers, in partnership with us, have designed that those slip lanes would continue. One of the key elements there, though, is the double pedestrian crossing that generates, and we're doing a little bit of further evaluation with the city's engineers on exactly that issue at the moment. The plan as it sits, though, will leave those slip lanes for traffic mobility.
Okay, thank you.
The other vehicular improvement happening at that intersection is the addition for both east and westbound Leavenworth, a double left turn lane to reduce queue stacking. We see periods of the day where the queue stacks up through a bunch of other intersections and generates, for people that are trying to go south or north in and out of Morton Meadows, especially on the east side of Leavenworth, some risky maneuvers. We believe that the improvements will make that a better condition.
So I have a question. Hi, this is Avon. This may or may not be a question about infrastructure. Right now, what are the biggest barriers the Med Center has to encouraging staff to get to work in ways other than driving alone in a car?
I think there's a goodly part of that is an infrastructure question. I do want to celebrate. We believe on any given day we believe we're between 25 and 30% diversion from individual vehicle arrival for employee, staff, and students, which we think is just about the highest in our region. We're pretty proud of it. That said, there's a lot of work to do. And the work is layered. So I'm a cyclist. I'll talk from a cyclist perspective for a moment. I work in a building that doesn't have a shower in it if I have to arrive from a ways away, and has pretty limited bike parking. And the institution means super well. It's also across 10 or 12 million square feet, tough to get all of that stuff coordinated. So we're actually doing some work to think about improving conditions there. The perfect example is my parking spot on the days I choose to drive is a 4 or 5 minute walk from my office. If I use the university's dedicated indoor bike parking and commuter showers, which are lovely facilities, they're about a 12 or 13 minute walk from my office. And those things generate little frictions. So we've got a lot of work around removing little frictions from a cyclist standpoint, I think, to do. We've been working to get a lot more B-Cycle memberships out. That's been a little bit challenging for us. B-Cycle's been an amazing partner in that, and we're seeing really strong ridership. We have 3 of the stations on the Med Center campus in the top 10 from a ridership standpoint. And we see people taking a lot of short trips, say from our east end of campus to our west end of campus. We have more work to do there. And then the unpopular part of this, we may have to induce a little more friction in some of our parking, vehicular single occupant parking, to help drive change over time. We're not yet ready to do that. Just frankly and transparently, our workforce issues are are significant challenges at the moment. And one of the big drivers we hear is access to vehicles. So we then work on readiness to change with them with our Travel Smart program and work there. The next layer I'd talk about a little bit is our public transit access, buses, particularly eventually streetcars and other modes. We have really strong ridership, thousands of rides a month, tens of thousands of rides during the school year per month. And we do good work there, but we also have, as our campus has grown, work to do around making it easier for people to get to the spots where the 15 and the 2 and Orbit and the other bus lines move, and making that waiting and arrival experience smoother and have less friction for folks. Those are the first thoughts that come to mind. There's layers beyond that as well. I think there's stuff we can do to continue to promote carpooling, especially when we're successful at it, has been pretty popular. And as we get people ready to change, we've been working, we call it daily rate flex parking. When people give up their parking permit and their dedicated access to a lot, they gain access to all of our daily rate flex slots. And I think we've got work to do to make those even more enticing locations, so that if somebody's got to be on campus 3 days a week, 1 or 2 of those days they choose to leave the car at home and arrive other ways, but the day they do for some reason feel a need to drive their car, they've got something that isn't the worst parking spot in the whole university from a daily rate flex standpoint, so that they feel met where they're at, for lack of a better word. Does that start to answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. So yeah, back to the chat. Carmen asks, will lights be added at 48th and Saddle Creek and at the new southern access point onto Saddle Creek from 48th?
Right now, no plans from the city to add lights at 48th and Farnham. There will no longer be a 48th at Leavenworth, and at where 48th hooks on the Saddle Creek, it will be a right in, right out movement from southbound Saddle Creek. It's kind of hard to explain some of the. I talked myself in a circle there, Renata. Pardon me if I didn't answer your question, but 48th and Farnham will continue to be a non-signalized intersection. 46 will be getting a 4-way light and a dedicated ped crossing stuff, and then free movement on and off of Saddle Creek, but only from southbound because there will be a median. John Davis, why are Lime scooters not allowed on UNMC? Seems like this would make sense. Lime would not commit to pick them up off of our campus when they got left on campus. And there's layers of challenging stuff there. We're desirous of enabling that functionality. We need some commitment from those vendors and providers that they will ensure that things get picked up and don't get left in the public right away. We allowed them during the first pilot a few years ago before COVID, and we had several ADA submissions and violations of scooters blocking stuff, and they haven't come back to the table. We'd like to have a deeper conversation with them.
I think Renata has a couple of dangling questions in the chat.
Oh, you're right. I skipped past those after Carmen's. First question around emergency vehicles. We've designed one of the interesting challenges of being an urban and campus planner working at a medical center is emergency vehicles want to drive 60, turn the corner with wheels squealing and all of this stuff because they're trying to save lives, which I respect and appreciate. It does mean there are high risk intersections and there are times where movements can be conflicted. We've worked over time to reduce those conflicts. The other thing that I think is kind of cool is we've worked for all of the areas that have emergency vehicle access on campus. We've worked to ensure that there are two ways in and out because we have so much infrastructure and so many projects going on. There are times where we need to close one. The recent example, 5 years ago, or 7 years ago, we were finishing up construction on the Fred and Pamela Buffett Cancer Center, and we had one of the two ways to our emergency department block for a couple of years. So that's important stuff to think around. These protected structures are all, the grade separated stuff is all high enough that emergency vehicle access isn't an issue. And the protected structures will be designed to mitigate those overlaps. 42nd and Emily's, frankly, our biggest risk that will need a fair bit of design. I think an e-bike rental or checkout process could over time become a really interesting way to help people transition from the I'm kind of interested, should I ride bike, e-bike to work, to the it is enough of a thing that I'm willing to make the commitment and have the capacity and the means to make the investment, either by selling a vehicle or whatever, to end up with an e-bike of their own. I think there are ways that we could initiate some programs over time. We've been talking a little bit with our student senate about that. We haven't reached critical mass yet, but our B-cycle ridership these last few years signals that we might. With another good one here around Saddle Creek right-of-way building lines, future ability for daylighting of the creek, adding rail or bus rapid transit, etc. How much have we taken that stuff into account? So I talked first about flooding because that's, I think, the most compelling challenge the Saddle Creek corridor presents to the campus and the region, and there's this wonderfully complex story about Douglas County and how much the Saddle Creek catchment basin goes like a big funnel as you head north of Saddle Creek and Dodge, all the way out to the bounds of Douglas County and into Washington County, how much area it drains. And the Corps of Engineers is doing work around some of that to mitigate things. As we've designed what you saw for a master plan standpoint, we looked at 3 or 4 models. One saying the Corps doesn't do anything to fix some of the upstream stormwater issues. One, if they do, and then we look downstream that if it's not online now, it will be online soon. South of Baxter, along the kind of Keystone Trail and that drainage way, the city has built a rapid water treatment plant for during storm events, where during high water events they can treat that. So we've taken that into account and other things, but the short answer is we believe there will still be some limited times of flooding over time that we as a larger region don't appear to be on a path to mitigating. So we've designed our base building elevations and the Saddle Creek work and the work we do east of there up the hill with some of those assumptions in place. We think that does not preclude, meaning it still allows for bus rapid transit, streetcar, other things in the future crossing Saddle Creek, maybe not running streetcar or fixed rail movement would probably be challenging in Saddle Creek. We've actually designed the new 46th Street. We're not putting any track in it, but we've designed the infrastructure under the street and the layout of that street to accept a streetcar in the future to mitigate some of the north-south area along Saddle Creek where it would have to run, and that would put it several feet up the hill from the Saddle Creek thing. At the moment, the Corps of Engineers and MUD and the city don't believe daylighting the creek's a responsible possibility short of closing the street. You'll note that the green space we preserved in the plan we're showing here, we hope to pay homage. And if in the future things change dramatically there and that creek wanted to get daylit again by the city or other parties, we think it probably preserves that ability. But at the moment, it looks pretty technically challenging from a feasibility standpoint to do it. I'm exceedingly just last comment, D, on your question. I'm exceedingly bullish about our ability to adapt over time for transportation changes with the work we're doing in the district. I think it's going to be pretty compelling. I also think if we're successful with this flight of grants, there's some kind of short connections that we can do to get people west of 50th on maybe that Howard corridor and into much lower traffic areas. And eventually I'd really like to work with Child Savings Institute, the city, and others about getting folks safely across Dodge Street, which would be the next great barrier from a ped and bike standpoint. So those are the last thoughts I'd leave there. Evan's question around, pardon me, I may have misenunciated that.
Haven
you were-
rhymes with Raven.
Avon rhymes with Raven. Thank you, Avon. Apologies for the misenunciation. We're working on our first climate action plan at the moment. And one of our biggest risks that needs mitigation and consideration is heat related issue. We think we're good from a built environment standpoint, meaning our buildings, there's work to do. I don't want to undersell the impacts of changing climate on the built environment in Midtown Omaha. I think it is real. But the thing that I think is really compelling as we build this multimodal transit infrastructure and we succeed, which we will, in getting a lot more people moving outside of individual vehicles across through and to our campus, we're going to need to think more about that. We've just started to chew on that heat related thing. But shade trees, cooling stations, and a few other thoughts jump to our mind around some of that stuff for sure.
I'll ask about the bike parking. I know that we've already covered the sort of the staff parking or the parking that's available to people who are planning to visit on a very regular basis and sort of are familiar with the infrastructure. But I am curious, what your inspiration is for the visitor parking, what that might look like.
The super interesting question that frankly, I wonder, so we don't see much demand signal to date. And I actually believe that that's probably because we make ourselves relatively unwelcoming from a patient visitor arriving on a bike standpoint. We've got work to do there. We see the work we did early in our securing the campus for COVID stuff has brought down the number of locations where patients and visitors come in and out of the campus. So the places that we're likely to see you arrive just for a doctor's visit or something like that, the number of doors, before COVID, we had maybe 150 unlocked doors, and now we've got 5 or 10. So the problem in some ways becomes easier to solve because the number of places that somebody that isn't a regular is going to arrive is smaller. The challenge about that is so much of today's arrival by those folks is vehicle that they're also some of the highest risk locations to induce pedestrians and visitors. or pedestrians and cyclists. So we've got work to do there. I don't have a good answer at the moment. It is in our kind of short to midterm queue to evaluate for a couple of our highest use entries, especially if we're successful in this DOT grant, because this protected bikeway will go by 2 or 3 of those highest use entries, and we'll need to time align that coming online with improved welcome biker buddies stuff. Yep, the family medicine clinic on the 5th floor of the Durham Outpatient Center does not have bike parking out in front of it, Liz. I believe that's what you're talking about.
This is me, Alex, again. I was actually at the Durham this past weekend. I was just going to the lab. Couldn't find any parking in the green parking garage. The map says there's parking outside the Durham by the circle. That's non-existent. So yeah, I guess, and this is probably definitely getting out of your area, but having signage, stuff like that, and just so people know that it's available. And maybe going is probably still outside of your knowledge, but is there any discussion or anything of doing some sort of shuttle for patients or for even for employees to get them from their parking lot or from one appointment from one building to another building? Because a lot of I guess people that I've talked to, they don't have that mobility just within themselves to walk and bike between.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions in there, and the chat's lit up on the bike parking I was going to mention, which is on the north side of that green lot 2 parking garage. But it's one of the doors that is not staffed, so we locked it for patients and visitors, which means the wonderful bike parking that was there close to an entrance is now, you've got to walk back around, either go in the door of the cancer center and back to the Durham Outpatient Center, or around the Durham parking garage to the Durham entrance. Again, I think we need to get some bike parking by the Durham entrance. The low mobility access to campus and accessibility kind of concerns for parking and stuff like that is something we're always working on. That Durham Outpatient Center is one of our toughest. Some really smart architects and engineers designed a pretty rough garage to move around in, and it's both confusing and at times generates conflicts in traffic movements between pedestrians once they're out of their vehicle and the vehicles. You're right, Lori, the ones that were in front of the parking garage got taken out, and we need to, as part of a pavement renewal, we need to get that fixed. Alex's comment also about signs is an important one.
So I was just there today, and not on my bike, but there are bike racks in the green parking level on level 1, and you can get in those doors, correct?
You can,
When I was there before,
for some reason, I thought we had them closed, and that's just, I must be misremembering, Cindy.
I don't think so. But anyway, so one time I was there, and because I always ride my bike to appointments, and one time there was an attendant at the gate, when people were coming and going, and he did not know where they were. And I think that's really important to let people know, hey, yeah, we do have bike parking.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. It's like walking into a store and the attendant has no idea where they keep the screws, right? Well, come on, we can do better.
Okay, I don't mean to ask a million questions, but
No, you're good.
I don't know if this is within your area either, but with the streetcar, I don't know, is that planned to reach the med center? And if so, are there concerns with emergency vehicles and being slowed down by the streetcar?
There's been pretty extensive planning around emergency vehicles in the streetcar. Farnham is a pretty key corridor for emergency vehicles coming to campus from the east. We're really comfortable that other cities have solved this and that the early planning we've seen on that will solve it. The streetcar certainly is intended to get to the Med Center. The wonderful and talented group of folks working on that are finalizing the details. We're not part of those routine discussions. We have been thinking a little bit about how it would in the future extend through our campus and not just to our campus, but that work is incomplete as of yet. I think there's a couple options though. Carmen, is the Saddle Creek lid off the table now? I have spent 5 years trying to find money from grants and other things to get a fully formed lid funded as we had originally concepted a few years ago, and we've been unsuccessful. We continue to do work there, and we think the future Project Next and Saddle Creek stuff, if we can find funding over time, could still allow it. That said, we've also tested a couple of other skywalk concepts for a more northerly connection across Saddle Creek, kind of roughly in that Farnham corridor. Happy with 2 bridges. Well, it's I see the hour's almost up. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk, and appreciate many of you I've met in other situations, and we've had other dialogues. Appreciate everyone's discussion and feedback through all of this. I'm pretty excited, as you can tell, about some of this development over the next few years.
Yes, it is exciting. Thank you very much for coming to talk to us about it.
Yeah, be well and have a great evening.
You too. So we have another 15 minutes of the member meeting to talk about whatever, pretty much. So if there's any announcements that you want to make, any maybe teams that are doing exciting things you want the wider membership to know about, this is your opportunity to share them.
Nope. Thanks, Avon, for taking lead on the meeting. I'm here with a handful of people that just watched. This is Liz, the board chair of ModeShift. I was just going to announce, if people don't know, there's a bike ride on Sunday for Benson Days that ModeShift is helping lead. Derek Babb on the board is helping lead. I will try to see if I can find something about that and put it in the chat, but that's happening. And then ModeShift is doing bike valet this weekend at Maha. Hopefully people signed up for that and are maybe getting free tickets to go to Maha to help with bike valet. Oh, and then, yeah, the Vision Zero, the city of Omaha, Vision Zero is having an open house on August 15th. Where is that? I'll see if I can find it and put it in the chat, and or put stuff. Oh,
I
Cindy
think
says
it's at the UNOCEC, the Community
Oh.
Engagement Center, I think.
Great. Thanks.
Hi, this is Adrian Hernandez. I'm not a regular. I'm a guest. I work for Dundee Bank. I wanted to join tonight, one, to hear about UNMC, but also to just make you aware that the bank branch in Benson is getting closer. We're probably less than 60 days out, and we're excited. We're not going to have a drive-through at the bank. We're going to have what we think maybe is the state's first ever bike up window for banking. And we will certainly send an invite to all of you to join us once we get that branch open, but we for sure want to capitalize on the opportunity to talk about different modes of transportation when we open Benson. And we think having you all involved and aware of that bike up window is important. So more to come there. I'll try to make sure to reach out to this group and let you know as we get closer and talk about a grand opening party and all that.
That's exciting. Thank you for sharing. As the walkability team lead, I wish I had things to report, but actually we just had an event last weekend. I guess stay tuned for a blog post going up soon about that event. So as always, check the blog for news. But we don't have anything immediately planned upcoming. We are tentatively, okay, we've been talking about having another Walk With Us event in late August near the transit center or between like the transit center in North Omaha and 30th and Ames. But I think we need to nail down some details before we can commit to that. So possibly more to come. If you have ideas for things you want the walkability team to be doing or issues that you think we should be addressing, let me know. I'm going to put my email in the chat and hope that we can keep up momentum through the winter as the window for doing outdoor events closes.
I guess one thing to remind, Safe Omaha Streets is doing their road safety audit from 72nd Street between Dodge Street and Pacific Street. You can go to safeomahastreets.com to get the audit form, but looking for audits to be done, walking, biking, or driving. But the last day to turn that in is the 31st of July.
So, this is Stuart and Laura. We're with the bike team and just want to remind everybody a week from today, we've got our bike team meeting. And then the 12th, we have the bike team coffee hour, which will this time will be at the Highlander. And Michael Kolakowski is coming up with Not Just Bikes 2.0, where we have to bring up a video from Not Just Bikes and then discuss it after we watch the video. So we'll let everybody know when that's going to be as soon as we get that finalized.
Right, as long as we're talking dates, I guess I'll add walkability team's next meeting is August 9th at 7 p.m. on Zoom. Well, if there's nothing else, then I am just going to close down the meeting. Thanks for coming, everyone. See you in a month or sooner.
Take care.
Take care.